Welcome back, Silver and Black. Today, the Mailbag, the Raider Nation Mailbag edition during this shortened bye week. I say shortened bye week because here we are on Thursday. We normally have a show on Thursday, but there's nothing else coming this weekend. Right. There's no Raider game. There's no post game. There's no live Bleacher Reports with Mo. Or is there this weekend, Mo? Not for the Raiders, right?
None at all.
None at all. So
I'm off till Wednesday.
See, there you go. So Mo gets some time off, so you people will leave him alone. But anyway, welcome back. Silver and Black today, an Odyssey original podcast. Also heard on the air, on the radio in Las Vegas on the Bet. If you're a Bet listener, thank you so much for being with us. And shout out to you in Las Vegas this weekend. We're going to get through mail today because we're in a bye week. But Mo and I also are just going to start just yapping about stuff, right? Mo talked about some coaching candidates on his Bleacher Report Live this week. We're going to talk about some of that. I also did the same thing with other teams too, not just the Raiders, on sportsnaut.com, where we both are writers. Mo is the senior NFL writer at Bleacher Report, also Raiders columnist at sportsnaut.com. I am a writer, editor, and host at sportsnaut.com, so check out all the work. Also follow Mo on x.com at Momoton, Moemoton. I'm at LV Gully. Okay, Mo, before we get into the mail, let's talk a little bit about this coaching thing. So here's the thing, and I know people are going to get pissed, but this is just the way I feel. So I'm just going to get, because, today it's all about feelings, right? Everything's about feelings. And here's my feelings. So I don't want you to crap on my feelings because then you would be insensitive. My feeling is that everybody wants Antonio Pierce as coach. He's a good man, doing a good job with what he got handed, okay? But I can't believe that we're seeing reports and things that Raider players will go nuts if he doesn't get named coach. And it's like the dude is 2-2, and we don't know what's going to happen over the last 5 games. Hopefully he does well. Hopefully he goes, he goes 4-1. Would be great for the Raiders, great for our show, great for the fans out there. But this idea that it's a fait accompli, we talked about on our last show. We even got some negative comments about your stuff because we put some clips up from the last show where you were talking about what's the hurry. Because we know. He's one of us. Let's go. Come on, hire him. There's no hurry, right? So that's bugging me because I'm not saying the guy can't earn it, because he can. If he earns it and they name him coach, great. But if he goes 1-4 the last 5 games, who's going to argue with me that they should find another coach? I mean, really, because everybody likes him? Again, back to feelings. So I want to talk about that because you talked about it at length on your Bleacher Report Live. And you named a candidate. I named a candidate on a Sportsnaut video I did this week as well. So let's start off there, and then we'll get into the mail. You have an interesting candidate, one that I really, really like because I think he's done a great job and has a track record of doing a great job everywhere he's been. So let everybody know sort of your choice. If Antonio Pierce doesn't get the job, I know all of you will stop being Raider fans, right? Okay. No, seriously. Tell me your name. Tell everybody about the guy you talked about on your Bleacher Report Live.
Well, it was on Wednesday, and the topic was head coaching candidates for the Raiders other than Antonio Pierce. So even though I included Antonio Pierce, as he's going to have the first shot because he's the one with the job now, and if he wins, he's more likely to get the job.
Correct.
Right? That's the logical approach to it. But if he's not, I like Brian Johnson, the offensive coordinator of the Philadelphia Eagles. He was the quarterback's coach for a couple of years. So he's helped develop Jalen Hurts into what he is today. And now Jalen Hurts, again, is an MVP candidate. Now, he didn't win it last year, had some injuries at the end of last year, kind of tapered off. But I think if Jalen Hurts wins MVP this year, and even if he doesn't, I think Brian Johnson should get a lot of interviews for a coaching position. Now, I don't think he's getting enough buzz because he's a first-year offensive coordinator. So a lot of people aren't familiar with him. They're still on Shane Steichen, who took the Colts head coaching job. And Shane Steichen is doing a fine job with the Colts right now because they're on the cusp of they're trying to make the playoffs as well, 6-5. But Jalen Hurts is still an MVP candidate under Brian Johnson. And the Eagles offense and the Eagles team has been battle tested all year. They had a game against the shootout against the Bills. They beat the Chiefs in the Super Bowl rematch. They got the San Francisco 49ers coming up, but they're 10-1. And their offense is still flourishing, even without Shane Steichen. Now, again, a lot of that is they build their roster inside out. So they have a strong offensive line, Lane Johnson, Jason Kelsey, those guys up front make it happen, right? But Jalen Hurts is still in my opinion, a top quarterback in this league, and some of that
Okay.
has to go to the offensive play caller because Nick Sirianni isn't the primary play caller in Philly. It's Brian Johnson that Shane Steichen is not in the picture in Indianapolis. So I think Brian Johnson should get more mentions as a head coaching candidate for the Raiders if it's not Antonio Pierce.
It's a great call, and I agree with you. And I want to remind you too, Shane Steichen, who is doing a great job, by the way, was a quarterback at what school? UNLV. UNLV playing for the Mountain West Conference Championship this Saturday, by the way, in Las Vegas at Allegiant Stadium against Boise State. Go Rebels. Okay. So yeah, no, I agree with you, and I think you're right, and it's interesting because I love talking to our listeners, and mostly it's in social media. And it's interesting though, and I want to remind people this because a lot of people, I don't want another coordinator. I don't want a so if we're going to get a coordinator, then just keep Pierce. He's a defensive, and he's like, no, he was a position coach. He wasn't a coordinator. Patrick Graham's a defensive coordinator, number one. Number two, though, for example, with some of the Raiders' struggles, Antonio Pierce, a lot of people want to say, well, it's not his fault. He doesn't have an offensive coordinator. Then when an offensive coordinator does well, then they want to say, well, it's because the head coach is great. So I'm seeing conversations go both ways, right? And I think with Johnson, he's going to be top 5 hot candidate in this offseason. Just is, because anytime a team has success, we saw with Brian Dable, of course, in Buffalo when they started to ascend. What happened? I mean, he ended up staying one more year, but then he left to take the Giants, and we know what happened there. But nonetheless, I think you have to look at this, especially with. Yes, you have to have a good defense in the NFL, no question, okay? But it is an offensive league. It is a quarterback-driven league. So my preference, Mo, is to go with somebody who has a dynamic offensive mind, okay? Johnson fits that bill, 100%, okay? Be a lot of people pursuing him, though, so the Raiders wouldn't be the only one. But I like what he's doing there and what he's done under Dan Campbell. The guy I brought up, and I want to remind everybody, because I'm always told this by Raider Nation, the most faithful, hardcore fans on earth, Raider Nation, is once a Raider, always a Raider, right? So Antonio Pierce, he's a Raider. He'll always be a Raider as a coach. There's also a coach by the name of Frank Smith. You remember him? He was a tight ends coach from 2018 to 2020 for the Raiders. Frank Smith then left for a year, went to L.A., to Chargers. Okay, boo. Chargers, and did some good things there with the core of the offense, including the running backs. Then he gets a job. Some dude takes over in Miami named Mike McDaniel. He brings in Frank Smith as his offensive coordinator. In his first year, Frank Smith has a top 10 offense, and you say, well, top 10, that's good, but it's not like amazing. Well, it's the first time the offense had a top 10 offense since 1995, and I was in college, by the way. That's how long ago that was. And so he does that amazing year. Helps tutor Tua Tagovailoa, okay? Then you see what happens this year. Has the top offense in the NFL. That's 2 years in. He's done it. He's also innovated. I know Mike McDaniel's a part of that, but also the offensive coordinator, to your point, Mo, calling the plays, right, too? And so I love what he brings with this innovative offensive strategy. I like he's also a young guy, just like Johnson is. He also coached Darren Waller. Remember? Darren Waller's best years were when Frank Smith was his coach before he got hurt. So I think either one of those guys, I would be, if you guys can get over the Antonio Pierce crush, and Antonio Pierce, if he doesn't get the job, meaning if something doesn't work out and he doesn't get the job, either one of those guys, Raider Nation should be very excited about. There's the next generation of coaches coming up. And these two are the best, in my view, that are going to be available if they leave.
It's funny because when I did my Bleacher Report live stream on Wednesday, I had 3 underrated coaches that should get a little more discussion as potential coaches in 2024. Ben Johnson was my number 1. Frank Smith was my number 2. And Mike McDonald, the Ravens defensive coordinator, was number 3.
That's a good one.
Now, all those guys are relatively young. Under 45, younger than 45 years old. Of course, most fans want an offensive mind, so I understand why Mike McDonald may not get a lot of talk. But guess who he was an assistant under? Jim Harbaugh at Michigan.
Jim Harbaugh, yeah. So
So
there you go.
Jim Harbaugh Jim Harbaugh recognized him as a bright young mind, brought him in Michigan in I believe it was 2021, because he spent most of his time with the Ravens. He came up as an intern with the Ravens, spent the year in Michigan, came back to Baltimore, became the defensive coordinator. So he's garnered the respect of a well respected head coach who's had a lot of success, college and pro, and that means something. And now he's doing it with the Ravens. What he's doing with the Ravens without the big star name players. I know they have Jadeveon Clowney, but Jadeveon Clowney is toward the end of his career. Justin Madubuike has 10 sacks this year. A lot of people weren't talking about Justin Madubuike before this year. Of course, they have Roquan Smith. He's also developing Kyle Hamilton, who is a safety from Notre Dame. So he's got some young pieces. He's got some older pieces over there. And the Ravens are, I believe, second in total yards allowed and second in scoring and points allowed. So he's doing a wonderful job as a defensive mind. But again, my number one candidate will be Brian Johnson. And I also like Frank Smith for all the reasons that you mentioned. If you're thinking, and the other thing is that I mentioned on my stream is, if you want Michael Mayer to be more involved in the offense, what better hire than Frank Smith, who helped develop Darren Waller into what he was with the Raiders and broke Tim Brown's receiving record for catches for the franchise. So I think that Frank Smith is also a kind of, not kind of, he would be a great pick for the Raiders as well if it's not Antonio Pierce.
Yes, and I'm gonna name one other just briefly because I think he's a little young. He might be another year before he gets opportunities at a head coaching level, but maybe not. And that is Press Taylor. Press Taylor is Zach Taylor, the coach of the Bengals. His younger brother is the offensive coordinator of the Eagles. He's the guy who came up with the Beverly shove, tush, push, whatever you want to call it, right? So you see what now. I know they've had some outages on offense occasionally, but he's a guy with Jalen Hurts too. He's been there to continue to make sure his maturation continues. And so I like that he comes from a football family. Did good work at the Colts. The Colts never had a quarterback, but he did work there too with the receivers. Of course, Jonathan Taylor when he was really doing well, as well as the receiving corps. So there's some, and my point about that too, to name a third guy there really is just that there's a lot. If you don't know about a lot of these good young coaches in the NFL that are doing things that are very innovative and successful, not the recycled dudes that you hear that are 59, 60 years old. I'm talking about dudes in their 30s who have ascended quickly. Some of them, like Taylor, obviously has a football family. His brother's a head coach. But you look at those guys and you look at Johnson, you look at Smith. These are the young, bright minds that are changing how the NFL, and they've changed along with the NFL. They've devised and created offensive schemes that have proven to work. Okay, now they have talent in those places. The Raiders don't have all that talent, but they have talent. So it's worth noting, and I know we will watch this as things continue. But of course, it's Antonio Pierce's job to lose, so he's got the inside track until he doesn't, and that's just fine too. So all good. All right, we're going to take our first break. Wait, one more thing before we go to the break?
Just a quick note about Press Taylor. He did come up with the Eagles, but he is the offensive coordinator for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So
yes, excuse me. He is the Jacksonville Jaguars. Thank you. Yes.
When Doug Peterson took over and helped Trevor Lawrence become what he is, Press Taylor was under him as the offensive coordinator. Just want to make that clear.
Thank you. Yes. Been a long day. I mentioned the wrong team. Just like last show, I said the Raiders had 6 games left. It's really 6 weeks, but they have a bye. So... And our listeners told me, dude, it's not 6, it's 5. I'm like, no, you're right. It's 6 weeks, but it's 5 games. So
apparently, we both need a short break, recharge our batteries.
We do. This weekend will be nice. I mean, we still have to cover the rest of the league, but without Raiders duties, it's a little lighter, which is nice. So that's good. Okay, we're going to take a break here on our Odyssey Original Podcast, also on the radio, on the Bet in Las Vegas. You're listening to us on a Saturday. When we come back, we're going to get into your mail, your phone calls, see what's on your mind, and Mo and I will answer, and we'll do some other goofiness, I'm sure, as well. You're listening to Silver and Black Today with Mo and Scott. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back, Silver and Black Today, Odyssey Original Podcast covering your Las Vegas Raiders. Also heard over the air on the radio in Las Vegas, on the Bet in Las Vegas, a great Odyssey sports station. If you don't already listen to it, you can stream it on the free Odyssey app. If you want to listen to it outside of Vegas, or if you're there, plug it in your car radio and have some fun there too. I like the app anyway. It's crazy. I get in my car sometimes. I have satellite radio mode, but I plug in the phone a lot of times, and I'm listening to other apps that play podcasts, music, all that kind of stuff. It's weird how all of our habits have changed.
Shout out to all the people that posted their most listened to podcasts. Jay Puffed on the X. I forgot who else was. Someone else posted it. My apologies that I forgot your X name, but there were a couple of people that posted their most watched or most listened to podcasts, and they had us in the top 3, and I thought that was pretty cool.
That is cool. Yes, we're seeing that around, and so thank you guys for that. And that, we always say that, right? We always say, look, without the listeners, we're not here. So,
Right.
and it's the truth because do you think a company like Odyssey, this big, massive radio company who also has a podcast network, we're one of 32 podcasts covering the NFL, and we're in the top 3 of all podcasts that cover the NFL for this massive network. And without you guys, we wouldn't be here. So we appreciate that. It was, Jay Puffed.
Bill
You had that
Montoya.
one.
Bill
Bill Montoya.
Montoya.
There it is. Yes, Bill Montoya.
Shout
Right
out to Billy
behind the Chris
Montoya.
Long podcast on his list. And right next to our good friend Q's Locked On Raiders podcast. So
Shout out to Q.
Yes. We're all
Me and
we're
Q
all
have
buddies.
back channel discussions now and then. We're
Yeah.
still friends. If anyone's wondering, there's no beef between anyone here. Q
No.
and I are still tight buddies, pals, friends,
Absolutely.
compadres, amigos.
Yeah, my former partner, he preceded you as my partner here and on the
Mhm.
radio in Las Vegas. Before he got the job there and he was still in Texas, he was my co-host on Raider Nation Radio. So we're all still
I'm
good
just
friends.
filling the spot. What does Q always say? I got to start using some Q phrases. Cooking with grease is one of them.
Cooking with grease.
That's definitely one of them.
Yes.
I got to think of some more Q-isms as we go on today, but I'll definitely toss them in there.
Okay, that works for me. I like that. That's always welcome. All right, we're going to get into your messages. We have a call here. Let me make sure I have the noises on. I think his name is Jared. He says it really quick on the phone. So if your name isn't Jared, you'll know who you are, though. You're in Chicago. Okay? So here's Jared's message, as long as I don't screw up my buttons here. Here we go. Here's Jared from Chicago.
Hey, Scott. Hey, Mo. This is Tarek calling from Chicago.
Derek? Jared?
Emailed you guys earlier and predicted today's game. Really, really disappointing. We should have beaten Miami, but come into this game and to have such a fast start, 14-0, should have been 17-0 against the defending champs. Devontae got started really quickly, as did Jacoby. A beautiful 63-yard touchdown run by Josh Jacobs. And then, the chefs did what good teams do, what great teams do, and they made adjustments. And for some reason, we did not adjust to what they were doing offensively. It's really, really frustrating to think we would have scored 3 points the rest of the game after such a fast start, heading into our bye week at 5-7. I'm kind of curious what you guys think about Antonio Pierce at this point. I think, honestly, anytime you change head coaches in the middle of the year, especially when you're going with a rookie quarterback who doesn't have a lot of experience, it's going to be difficult. I think Aiden O'Connell, again, he's going to continue to grow and learn, but I don't think he's the long-term solution. He has almost zero athleticism, can't even get out of the pocket to extend plays. It just seems like he doesn't have the ability to do that. And that's not something you learn over time. Either you got it or you don't. But again, very disappointing loss. Kansas City simply owns us, 5-7 into our bye week. Hopefully we find a little bit of rejuvenation, get some rest, and then you take on the Vikings. So looking forward to your guys' show this week. Have a great week. Talk to you guys later. Take care. Bye-bye.
There you go. It was I think it was Derek or Jared. Is it my old ears? Could you hear him very well?
I thought I heard Derek, but
Okay.
I'm sure he's gonna
Derek.
send a note and correct us anyway. But
yes,
I could be
which is
wrong.
great.
I could be wrong. So I don't.
Which is great.
Don't quote me on that one.
But the important thing is, it was a great call, well structured.
Yep.
I mean, obviously an intelligent dude who knows his football. Let's unpack what he asked there. Number one is what we think of Antonio Pierce. I think we've been pretty clear on this show. And I've said it from the beginning, Mo. We go back to the week Josh McDaniels got fired, and then they beat the Giants. Okay, 1-0. People are like, man, this team looks different. It's amazing. He's done this great thing. And I brought up at that point that the chances of an interim coach taking over and succeeding long-term are very, very, very slim. Just going by, now there's always an outlier. There's always something that completely comes out of the blue, okay? There's always that chance. But overall, if you look at the numbers, it's overwhelming that it just doesn't work out long-term, okay? So that's number one. But when I look at Antonio Pierce, I look at a guy who, if I'm running a business and I'm in a dire strait, look, and I want him as an employee. I want him somewhere in my organization. He's that kind of guy. He came in at that time when these guys were working under a coach that had no ability to relate to people. He relates to people. He's real. Okay? I respect the hell out of that. I like the guy. I think he's fantastic. He's inexperienced as a head coach. So for me, like we said in the first segment, if he wins out or does something amazing and this team just offense starts clicking, defense does well, things go well, okay, fine. Earn the job. I have no problem with that, even if it doesn't work out long term, okay? Deserve it. But you cannot close yourself off to other options, okay? It's a business, plain and simple. It's not just because you like somebody. So that's where I'm at with him. I'm rooting in one side of me as the underdog type thing to do well so that he can get the job. It would be a great story. On the other side, I'm like, well, if some of the guys we talked about in the first segment or a Jim Harbaugh or somebody's interested in the job, I think you got to explore that because no offense to Antonio Pierce, but he doesn't have that experience.
I'll say this for right now. I think Antonio Pierce, when it comes to the people side of the job, because as a head coach, you have to also be the CEO of a company, basically.
Yep.
I think he has that. He has that quality. What I'm looking for in these last 5 games is how are his in-game adjustments? I know he's not a play caller. I get that. But he can make some calls. He can nudge Bo Hardegree. He could talk to Patrick Graham about what he sees out there because he's out there. He's watching the game. Just like the rest of us, he's up close and personal. He's the guy to make the big decisions, right? The macro stuff. So I want to see how his timeout usage, because a lot of people criticized him for that. Shouldn't use the timeout there. Should use the timeout there. Should have gone for it there. Shouldn't have gone for it there. Those are head coaching decisions. So let's see how he does in that aspect. Again, he has the people side down packed. The players buy into him. He relates to them. He's not far removed from the game himself, so he can relate to players more than any of the other older head coaches can relate to the players. But when it comes down to the X's and O's and making in-game decisions, that has to factor into his resume, his candidacy. So all I'm saying is it's TBD for now. There's no way you're settling in and saying he's the guy right now. With 5 games left, it doesn't make sense with 5 games left in the season. His resume is incomplete at this point. He's only halfway there. He's coached 4 games. He has 5 more left, right? So I say let it play out and we'll find out. If he's good enough, you'll know. By the end of the season, you'll know these guys have improved. They've made strides. They pulled off a few upsets here and there. They almost made the playoffs. You'll know. If he's not the guy, if he's clearly not the guy, you're obviously opening it up and casting a wide net because, as you said, it's a business and that's what you have to do. You're looking for the best candidate, not the most well-liked candidate. I think that should be important to know. Not the most well-liked person in the room, the best person for the job. Correct. That's what it has to be.
And while it's incredibly, vitally important, like we talked, like you said at the beginning of your statement there, Mo, you have to relate to people. So the fact that the players love Antonio Pierce is awesome. You want that, right? And they loved him before, by the way. It wasn't just after he became interim coach. That's why they loved him, because he was there. He listened to them. He talked to them. He related to them. That's only one piece of being a head coach. Okay? Mm-hmm. So when I see stories about, oh, they're gonna have a mutiny. Somebody said that. I don't know. Like, that's BS. Doesn't matter. Because you know what? There's no mutiny because you can't. What if they like him, they hire him, and they lose the first 12 games? You think they're going to like him after that? No, because you can't just go based on how you like someone or because they're a good person or because you want to see them succeed, which Antonio Pierce has already succeeded, and he will succeed in the future no matter what. He's that kind of guy. But you can't sit there and make your only criteria the players love him. It's important. You want that, right? But he also rescued them from a tyrant. So of course they love him. I mean, look, I raise kids. You know, we play good cop, bad cop, my wife and I with the kids sometimes. I get it. It's how it goes. So I get that piece of it, that they love him and all that stuff, and that's awesome. Just like they did Rich Bisaccia, but it's not the only reason, nor should it be the most important reason why they hire you. It should be a mix of those things.
There's one note I want to make about Antonio Pierce. One thing that I really like about him, And I think he gets the label as a player's coach, right? So when you think player's coach, you think, oh, he's not a disciplinarian. He lets the players run all over him. Guess what? He released Roger Teamer after his run-in with the law this past week. He bounced Marcus Peters out of here because his effort was in question. Nesta J. Severa hasn't seen the field since he had an IG Instagram post about being on the bench, and we haven't seen Nesta J. Severa on the field since that criticism of the coaching staff.
Right.
So this is not a pushover type of players coach. And I think that's important to note because usually when you hear players coach, you're thinking soft, lenient, lets the players get away with everything. And that's not it. I think he commands respect in the locker room, which is a thing that you need as a leader. Now he needs the results on the field. That's the other part of this that you were alluding to just a minute ago. It's fine to have the respect in the locker room. It's fine that players respect you. It's fine that you relate to them, but it's still results-based business. So if you're winning 6 or 7 games for the season, guess what? Whether you have the right quarterback or not, they're going to interview other people, and they're going to find out who the best candidate is. So with Antonio Pierce right now, he made some changes. He will make some more changes to the secondary following Peter's release, and we'll see how it plays out on the field. Because we all agree that Aiden O'Connell has shown improvements, right? So we can't say, oh, you can't judge Antonio Pierce because he doesn't have his quarterback. You can't judge Antonio Pierce because he doesn't have a good coordinator. You can still make an assessment on a head coach regardless of what's around him.
Correct.
What does he do with the pieces that are around him? And I think that's what the Raiders that's what Mark Davis is going to be looking at in these last 5 games.
Absolutely. And you can't also excuse him for bad performance, or not, I shouldn't say bad, for not performing well because he doesn't have an offensive coordinator, which is true. Okay. Or he doesn't have this, he doesn't have that. No. You do it. You have an audition with what's there. So you have to make it work. And he's admitted it. He just said it in the press conference this week. And that's what I love about him. He gets it. He understands.
He understands. Yeah, he does.
He's got no illusions that if he doesn't perform, he's not going to get the job.
Scott, anyone listening to this show, when you go for an interview, are you expected to have everything perfect and set up so that this interview could be perfect and your audition could be perfect and you could get the job? No, you have to deal with the cards you're dealt. You have to work with the cards that you're dealt with, whether they're advantageous or not. Life isn't fair. That's just the way it is.
I know.
You're judged on your performance. You're judged on the bottom line in a lot of these businesses. So whether it's set up perfectly for Antonio Pierce to be the head coach or not, the guys on the field that he has right now have to show some improvement. The Raiders have to show some type of overall improvement for him to get that job. And the record has to be decent on his watch. As I said, a winning record as an interim head coach would definitely help him, along with the buy-in from the locker room. But he's not going to get the job. I had someone I went back and forth with on the X say, even if the Raiders finish 7-10, he's going to get the job. And I'm like, absolutely not. You go 7-10, they're definitely going to open up the head coaching net to see what's out there because 7-10 isn't going to cut it, especially in the division where you got Sean Payton turning around the Denver Broncos. You got Andy Reid playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. And our Bleacher Report insider, Jordan Schultz, said the Chargers are basically going to fire Brandon Staley, barring a miracle. So they're going to be probably looking for another head coach. And what if they go get Jim Harbaugh? Then what? You're going to roll with an inexperienced head coach to go against Jim Harbaugh, Sean Payton, and Andy Reid twice a year?
Oh,
Excuse
and by the
me,
way,
that guy has to show something.
And by the way, Mo, all of those coaches, including the 2 that are already there, and then whoever fills in at the spot in LA when Brandon Staley gets fired, all have quarterbacks. Right? And so that's a big deal. You know, I talked about it today with a colleague, and they're like, well, if you're Harbaugh, would you rather go, because Harbaugh's name's coming up with the Chargers now. Would you rather have, if you're Harbaugh, would you rather go to Chargers and have a crappy owner? Because the Spanos family is terrible. Would you rather go there, or would you rather go to Chicago where your team is not as good? And I said, you know what? Both of them are appealing, and you know why? One place has the franchise quarterback. I know Raider fans don't like Justin Herbert, but sorry, he's good. And in Chicago, they have Justin Fields, who could be good. And we have a mailbag question coming up on Justin Fields in a minute. But if they don't go to Justin Fields, they will be in position. So if Harbaugh goes to Chicago, he says, I get to take my quarterback, who I want. Or I go to LA and I got a quarterback already there. I just need to help him get better and give him a defense for once, right? So remember that too, that even the Raiders, if they go for a veteran coach, it's a great job. It's one of 32. Of course, it's a great job. with the Raiders. But other jobs have other pieces that are more appealing, right? So you have to consider that as well, or unless the Raiders are able to move up into the draft and get a quarterback. So there's a lot of dynamics, and I think people, and I get it, you simplify it if you're not like us where you're thinking about it all day and working in it, but there's all those factors, and you're right. I think you go 7-10, there's just no chance.
All I'm saying is if you're going with an inexperienced head coach, he better show something special because he could be going up against 3 experienced head coaches in 2024 and for the long term. So the Raiders have to be very careful about the decision they make because that head coach is going to be playing chess with Andy Reid, Sean Payton, and whoever the Chargers hire next year.
Yes, and again, I go back to the data. 23 years since the year 2000, the only interim coach who went to the playoffs in his first year as an interim and then became a permanent head coach and succeeded and went to the playoffs again was Jason Garrett in Dallas. That's it. Nobody else, including some Raiders coaches, by the way. Now, Rich Bisaccia went once, but that was it. So he didn't get the job full time. So there you go. All right. Well, thank you, Derek, for your call in from Chicago. We appreciate it. Okay, next email is from Ryan Roebuck. Ryan says, hey, what up, guys? I'm on board with the Fields idea, but here's a scenario and a question. Mo, on our last show, by the way, for those of you who didn't hear it, mentioned that if Justin Fields is available, it could be an option for the Raiders. Okay? I summed that up right, Mo? I think I did.
Yeah.
Okay, he says,
I don't want to talk over you. I was just saying.
Oh, yeah, no. You can talk over me anytime you want. People love hearing 2 voices at the same time. And then he goes on to say, what if the Cardinals are also picking in the top 3 and decided to go the quarterback route? Would you prefer Kyler Murray or Justin Fields? What would you give up for each? Got to assume either one would be cheaper than all draft capital necessary to move up. That's Ryan from New Jersey, who says, by the way, I asked my wife for a Midtown Mo shirt for Christmas so I can walk around Times Square until Mo sees me.
That's the way to end an email.
That's awesome.
That's freaking awesome.
All
if
right,
I see, I might just really quick. I might just strolling around Times Square, but if anyone notices you, I'll let the people know.
Because he's in a limo, Ryan. He doesn't mix in with the commoners.
Stop it.
I mean,
more like a moped.
He's got a blonde on one side. He's got another girl on the other side, and they're in a limo, and they're going to Bleacher Report in Midtown. What are you going to do? The charm life. Okay, Kyler Murray or Justin Fields. This is an easy one for me, but I'm going to let you go first.
I would definitely take Kyler Murray, and I think it would probably cost because of he has a massive contract.
Yeah,
I would try to trade the Cardinals a player that's not Max Crosby, Devontae Adams, and it's they're going to ask for a first-round pick, but you know how negotiations work. You start low. I say, I'll give you a player in a second-round pick, and they hang up on me. And then I call back, and I say, okay, how about a first-rounder? And, but I'm not giving you a player. I'll give you a first-rounder and like a fifth-rounder. If I'm going to trade for Kyler Murray, I don't love Kyler Murray. I'll say that. I'm not saying that that's the move I would make. I would just prefer to draft a quarterback because, again, Kyler Murray has a massive contract. And on top of that, I watched him in the playoffs. He melted down when he got to the playoffs. Even when the Cardinals were competitive, he did not fare well in the playoffs. And I'm not against height, but for a small quarterback coming off of a knee injury, hasn't played well in the playoffs, gets banged up, I would get super nervous about having Kyler Murray as my franchise guy. Because remember, if you're acquiring Kyler Murray with that contract, you're basically saying he's our guy. Justin Fields financially would be more appealing for me because he's still on a rookie deal for now. And he's going to cost you a lot less draft capital. So you could probably offer the way he's playing. The Bears didn't let Justin Fields throw down the field very much. Now he completed a lot of the short stuff.
Yeah.
And maybe that was the game plan against the Vikings defense. But Justin Fields has been hurt. And I said it on the X. He has 35 fumbles in 35 games. He shouldn't cost you more than a third-round pick. And I'm not saying if I acquire Justin Fields, I would make him my starting quarterback. I would acquire Justin Fields so that he can compete with whoever we draft and Aiden O'Connell. Because remember, he's still on the rookie deal, so he's still not costing you a fortune yet.
Yeah.
Now that decision on his 5th-year option is coming up, but I would I would probably go with Justin Fields just simply because he's cheaper and you don't have to turn the offense over to him immediately as you would with Kyler Murray.
Absolutely. And obviously, Murray's been more successful overall in the NFL
Absolutely.
and proved that he can be a starter. But to your point, all the negatives, especially that massive contract. Justin Fields, you could bring in, if he's available. If Justin Fields is available and you can get him at the right price.
He will be.
Yeah, even if you give him, even if you take the option 5th year, it's not going to cost you that much. Again, it's the end of his rookie deal. And if he works out, great. You give him a nice big new deal because he went nuts. If he doesn't, you let him walk. Right? And hopefully if you get him and it doesn't cost you too much draft capital, what do you lose? You might get 2 quarterbacks in the same year. You might have 3 in camp. We talked about this, right? You might go get a rookie in the top of the draft, have Justin Fields and have Aiden O'Connell. Like, wow, I'll take that any day of the week, right? It's a good situation to be in. So I agree with you on that, Mo. And thank you again,
and
Ryan.
I want to make it clear to people listening to this because I know some people are gonna go to X and twist my words around. Kyler Murray is the better quarterback easily.
Right now,
I would prefer Kyler Murray. If I believe Kyler Murray is a franchise quarterback, I'm taking Kyler Murray. But if you have doubt Murray, you go with Justin Fields and let him battle for the quarterback job because the jury's still out on him. We don't know if he can be a starter in this league or not. Right. But you still have one more year after 2023 with him on his rookie deal. You don't have to exercise his 5th-year option. You could decline it. And then if he plays well, you give him a short extension like the Packers did with Jordan Love this past offseason. As you said, if he bombs out, if he wins the job and bombs out, you let him walk, you let him go, and you roll with the rookie quarterback that you drafted in the first round of the 2024 draft.
Yes. They should hire us, Mo. Plain and simple.
Absolutely. Champ Kelly, I'm out here in Brooklyn, New York. I'm available. I can work it around my Bleacher Report live schedule, and we can make it happen, Champ Kelly. I'll be an assistant to the assistant.
And again, I think that you look at that situation and you like I was on X during that terrible Bears Vikings game. And beginning of the game, I texted you. I said, Mo, look at Fields. He looks awesome because he did for the first half of that quarter. And then things kind of fell apart. Yeah. Not so much for him. I mean, he had some bad plays, but the offense just, again, disjointed. And people were criticizing me for saying he was doing well. I'm like, no, what are you watching? You're just listening to the narrative. You're not watching the game.
He was doing well for what the game plan expected of him.
Yes.
He wasn't expected to stretch the field, but Justin Fields I've seen Justin Fields throw 40-yard passes downfield accurately. A lot of people are going to criticize his accuracy. I get his accuracy isn't the greatest, isn't what you want to see from a franchise guy. But in order for him to improve or show something, you got to let him throw down the field. And I think it's clear to me that the Bears don't trust Justin Fields. And I brought up the 35 fumbles in 35 games. I also on X brought up the fact that he's been hurt now. Because of his style of play, he takes a lot of bumps and bruises. So that's another thing you have to factor into it. And I say this all the time. Part of being a franchise quarterback is being available. I think people forget about that. You can't be a franchise quarterback if you're missing 6 to 8 games every season. And that's the other concern I have with Justin Fields because he takes off and runs a lot. I want a mobile quarterback, but I want that mobile quarterback to be able to protect the football and protect himself and be healthy and available on Sundays, Mondays, and Thursdays.
Right. You have to be able to move enough, but not be a running quarterback, right? I mean, good example. I know very different players, but Joe Burrow, his first year in Cincinnati, one of the reasons he blew out his knee was because he was running too much. Then he hurt his knee, and now he's a different quarterback. He still moves around the pocket and makes things happen, but you don't have to be the running back. You don't have to be Lamar Jackson, right? You don't have to be that guy. You don't have to be, you don't have to be Josh Allen. Josh Allen's the leading running back on the freaking Bills. It's stupid. It's terrible. It's going to hurt him. So you don't want to have that with your quarterback. So, all right, good. We have time for one more question. Yes, it's gone that fast. I know some people, we do these and they're like, you only got to 4 questions. It's like, well, dude, we don't have 5 hours. We do a lot of discussion in between. And our readers are really smart. So we don't get like a one-line deal. There's some that I want to do tonight. We're going to have to hold the next week because they're like 7 paragraphs. And it's awesome that you guys send them in, by the way. It's just hard to read that much on the air. So we're going to get to Gary Harkin reader, of course, who writes in every time. This is a funny one. It's not a funny one, but I think you'll get the point. He says, hey, random thought there. Have you ever worked for someone that tells you that they want a project done? You do it, and they say, oh, I thought you'd do it differently. I feel Mark Davis is doing that with Antonio Pierce. If I could send a message to Mark Davis, I'd suggest that he gather all the coaches under the Al Davis torch. There, he would tell the coaches that the fire is the soul of his father and the Raiders, that the coaches are playing not to lose as opposed to playing to win. Then thank them for their time and excuse them. Just me being me. Thanks for your time, Gary. So I think Gary's frustrated by what he's seen, and he sent me some other messages back and forth. I think what he's seeing, and this is what we talked about when we say being aggressive, right? So you only have this little window where you get to convince somebody, the owner of the team, that you're going to be coach, and you're playing it safe a lot. And so at least that's his assessment of it. What do you think of that, Mo? And he's got a point there, doesn't he?
Look, I'll say this. There are a lot of criticisms about the Raiders being conservative, and they're too conservative in their losses. I think part of that, and I'm not giving excuses here, but I think part of that has to do with the personnel. Let's remember Colton Miller, I believe, didn't play against the Miami Dolphins. There were some offensive line issues at times where you can't let the big play develop downfield because you just don't have the time, right? So, again, I'm not giving excuses, but people are criticizing now Antonio Pierce for some of his decisions that he's made. People are criticizing the fourth down play call that he had, the run up the middle with Josh Jacobs that everyone and their mother and sister and grandmother saw coming, right? And people say, well, why don't you go with a different type of play? Why don't you go with not a trick play, but something that the Chiefs aren't expecting?
Right.
Be more aggressive, be more innovative. And I saw a lot of that during the Chiefs game as the Raiders lost their 14-point lead, evaporated within a quick second. But I'll say this, that I like the premise that it's not take what the other team's giving you. Take what you want. And I think that's the spirit of Al Davis and what he stood for when he was running the Raiders, that you don't want to be passive in an aggressive game. You want to be the aggressor. You want to take it. You want to take the fight to the other team. You're not stuck in reactionary mode. You want to be proactive. And I think that's Gary can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I think that's the premise of it. And I think that's the message that Antonio Pierce is going to have to run with in these last 5 games. Are the Raiders going to be passive? And I think Deshaun Reed wrote a great piece on The Athletic, and he said,
yes, he did.
The Raiders have nothing to lose, and they have to start acting like it. And I think that connects to what Gary Harker-Reed is saying.
Yes.
You have to be aggressive. What do you have to lose? You're 5-7. You have a rookie quarterback. You have a first-time offensive coordinator. Let it all hang out. Leave it all out there. Because guess what, Antonio Pierce? If your team goes 6-11, 7-10, you ain't getting another shot at this.
No.
So send that message to your guys and your coaches that we gotta let it all go because we may not get another shot.
Well, and I think that's exactly what Gary's getting at, because to me that is the big deal there. Because look, the odds were already against you as an interim staff, as I laid out the numbers weeks ago. It's just almost impossible to do it. Okay. So if that's the case, do you think your chances will improve if you play it safe? Or if you don't attack and be the aggressor? And the answer is no, because everyone else is going to believe that you can't do it. Everyone else is going to know that you're the temporary guy, so we're going to come in there, we're going to roll you over. So you got to hit back twice as hard, right? So I think you laid that out really nicely, Mo. Well done on that one. So Gary, yeah, we agree with you there, and I like the way the narrative you set out there with Al Davis and Mark Davis with the coaches. But you shouldn't have to tell them that, though. They should feel like, oh crap, maybe they like living in Las Vegas and now they got to leave if they don't win, if they don't get things going. So it's all good. But I think a lot of fans agree. It's interesting to see a lot of fans though who've backed off. Well, I don't expect much this year. Oh, if they win a couple more games, that's great. And I'm like, really? You usually don't hear that from Raider Nation. So it's really interesting. I think they've been lulled into some passive nature because of what's happened over the last couple of years with just all the drama and all that stuff. But we'll see over the next 5 games. That's the beauty of the game, is you got to go play it. You got to strap it up, strap that helmet up, and get out there and play the game.
One thing I want to make clear too, because I think people hear one side of the argument, not just on this show, but on X. A lot of people will take half of what you said and react off of that. The general feeling I have about Antonio Pierce right now is it could go either way. He has it in front of him. 5 games left in the season. It's too early to dismiss Antonio Pierce. It's too early to crown him the new head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders right now, simply because there's still 2 months of football left to play. And we don't know how that's going to turn out. We can guess. We can guess the Raiders are going to finish with 7, 8, 9 wins. But what if they don't? What if they finish with 9 to 10 wins? We don't know. So we're going to sit tight. We're going to ride it out with Raider Nation and everyone else watching these games. And we'll form our opinion as the games go on. Minnesota, Los Angeles Chargers, the Chiefs on Christmas, the Colts, ending the season with Denver. Based on what happens there, we'll have a decision. It'll be clear what the Raiders need to do.
That's what I think. I think it'll be pretty clear either way. And you're right. I'm with you 100%. Right down the middle of the road, could go either way. So we'll see. That's why you play the game. But we have no game this weekend, so we're going to check out of here. We're going to have a little bit of a longer weekend. So we will be back with you next Tuesday, by the way. And also, Mo, by the way, the 20th of December, right before Christmas, yours truly will be in the fan cave in Nashville with Mr. Murph. Yes, so we're going down there. We finalized it. So we might do a crossover show because Mo and I usually record Thursday's show on Wednesday evening. They do their show as well on Wednesday evening. So it might be a long night in the fan cave. I might be doing 2 shows. You'll hop on, and I think we'll probably have already had a few drinks by then. So it's going to be fun. We're looking forward to that and combining the shows. And it's funny. They sent me a message today because they're like, "Hey, what size shirt do you wear? Because you're coming down. We're going to get you some swag." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, you guys are way too nice, first of all." And then they're like we're having an argument on what size shirt we think you wear. And Murph's like, "I think it's," and this is all on video, by the way. They're sending me this video on my phone. Murph says, "I think it's a large." Michelle says, "I think it's an extra large." And I'm like, "Yeah, I got to lose a few pounds." But then she says, I think extra large because I think he's tall." And I'm like, "Tall?" I'm like, "Thank you, Michelle. I'm not that tall, but I appreciate it." And then Jeff says, "No, I think he's like me because Jeff is like 5'6". He's a little about your height, right? You're 5'6"?
I'm a little tall. I'm a little taller than Jeff.
Okay, so you're
which is a good thing.
5'8". 5'8"?
With Tim's on, I'm 5'9.5".
Okay, so then you're almost exactly my height. Yeah. So
Tim's on.
Anyway, but it was funny to get because they were getting geared up for their show tonight, and they sent me this video. Like, this is awesome. So we're gonna have fun down there, and we'll do some kind of crossover show right before the holidays. But we'll be back with you on Tuesday. Mo, what do you got coming up the rest of this week before you get some rest and relaxation with no Raider game this week?
First of all, shout out to Murph, Swag Jeff, and Michelle. You know what? It's going to be an interesting week this week because, as I said, no Bleacher Report lives until Wednesday. My Sports Night article, for those who didn't read it, is already up. I had 5 permutations of what the Raiders could roll out in their secondary and nickel package. So that's 3 cornerbacks.
Yep.
I think they're going to actually roll with Jack Jones on one end, Amik Robertson on the other end, and Nate Hobbs in the slot. So because Jack Jones took on most of the snaps after the Raiders bench Marcus Peters in that Chiefs game. So to me, they kind of tipped their hand a bit that it's going to be Jack Jones first in line. I would be surprised if they move Nate Hobbs outside and then insert Tyler Hall. Though I do like Tyler Hall, they've limited his snap count. So that piece is up on Sportsnot. And since the Raiders aren't playing, I'm just going to relax and survey the NFL landscape and see what's going on. Do a deep dive on some other teams, have some Sunday takeaways. Yeah. And of course, for the bettors out there, the betting article is up on Bleacher Report. If you want to make some money before the holiday season, my picks are hitting. Our picks are hitting at Bleacher Report. We're doing very well. We're above 55% hit rate. As you know, professionals need about 54, 55%. We're at that rate. Check it out on Bleacher Report. Our NFL picks every week drops Thursday morning.
Yes, and as a matter of fact, I was looking because I had just a brutal start because we were doing them up on Sportsnot, right? I was terrible. I'm now at 104-76.
That's good.
The leader is Jason Burgos. He's an editor writer at Sportsnot. He's at 113-67. So I think it's because we all miss some weeks here and there. We just forget picks or whatever. But I was way under 500. In the last 4 weeks, I've really done well because I've not listened to Mo. No, I'm just kidding. That's not why. I just actually put the time in. So, sorry. Getting a message there. Okay. Anyway, we're going to wrap up the show. We appreciate you guys being with us and my short attention span tonight. But we will be back next Tuesday. And do us a favor, make sure you subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your audio. We would certainly appreciate that. And Mo and I always appreciate your support and for turning on that auto download. And also to our viewers on YouTube, thanks for being there and hit the subscribe button. Also, a shout out to the folks in Las Vegas listening to us on the radio. Mo, enjoy your longer and more restful weekend, and we'll talk to you next week.
See you next week.
All right. For our producer, Mike Robier, for Mo Moten, I am Scott Branson. This has been Silver and Black Today. Take care, everyone.